Hello again, friend. Today we're going to talk about something very important. Chapter in history when people tried to use science to decide who belonged and who didn't. It's a serious subject, but I know we can explore it together with care.
Mr. Brewer, I've been learning about Earth maps, but some humans say certain people shouldn't cross certain lines. On Sagapalog, our lines are mostly for hopscotch.
Well, I wish Earth's lines were that simple. But in the early 1900s, many people believed to the contrary and could and should decide who was fit to enter using something they thought was science. A man named Francis Galton, who was the cousin of Charles Darwin, coined the word eugenics in 1883. He called it the science of improving stock. Galton believes humans could guide evolution, choosing who could and could not have children, because what nature does so blindly, so slowly, ruthlessly, man may do providently, quickly, and kindly. But this kindness would soon be used to justify great harm. By the 1900s, eugenics had become extremely popular in America, growing rapidly until it peaked in the 1920s and 30s. According to Hedika Paulovas, The Social Impact of American Eugenics Movement in 2022, British eugenics focused mostly on encouraging the best to have more children, but American eugenics took a different path. One Perlova described as negative eugenics, reducing those considered undesirable. This meant involuntary measures, laws to prevent certain people from having families. Scientists like Charles Davenport and Harry Laughlin promoted the idea that traits like poverty, criminality, and feeble-mindedness were inherent. Uh, Laughlin wrote Model Sterilization Law in 1922 that would be copied by other states. And in the Supreme Court would approve these policies in Buck v. Bell, with Justice Holmes stating 3 generations of imbeciles is enough. This ruling was never overturned. By 1983, between 60,000 and 70,000 Americans have been forcibly sterilized under the eugenics law.
Mr. Brewer, humans force people to not have families because they thought they weren't fit?
Yes, friend. And that's why we need to remember this history so we do not repeat it. Eugenic thinking doesn't just affect family, it affected the entire nation. In 1924, Congress passed the Immigration Act, also called the National Origins Act. This law restricted immigration from Southern, Eastern, and non-European countries because the lawmakers believed those groups were biologically inferior. Representatives like Albert Johnson, who helped write the law, used eugenic arguments in congressional debates. Senate document number 193 in 1927 presented a chart claiming that nationalities were fit and others were undesirable. At the same time, states like Virginia passed the Racial Integrity Act of 1924, which banned interracial marriage to preserve racial purity. All this came at the belief that the nation needed to protect its gene pool.
So people drew their hopscotch lines around other human beings?
Yes, friend. And some people drawing those lines claimed they were being scientific. A man by the name of Madison Grant wrote the book in 1916 called Passing the Great Race. Oh, he believed that racial mixing would weaken America. He believed that Europeans were the fittest race in evolutionary language to classify millions of people as biologically inferior. His books became enormously influential, influencing lawmakers and foreign leaders. Grant turned evolution into racial hierarchy. But not everyone would agree with Mr. Grant. The brightest geneticists, H.J. Muller, Raymond Pearl, W.E. Castle, Theodosius Dobzhansky, warned that eugenics were misusing biological science. They argued that eugenics was based off false assumptions about heredity and race. They showed that complex traits such as intelligence, morality, and success weren't inherited the way eugenics claims. Their voices would become even more urgent in the 1930s and 40s when the world saw what racial science could really lead to. Here, come with me as we break down today's lesson.
Hello, friends. we're back to our section of a lovely little review, looking at episode 3's thesis. By the late 19th and early 20th centuries, social Darwinism shifted from an economic ideology into a racial and national one, using language of fitness and degeneracy to justify exclusionary immigration laws, segregation, and state-sponsored eugenics. These policies claimed scientific authority, but ultimately served to reinforce existing hierarchies, shaping who was allowed to belong in America and who was marked as a biological threat to the nation's future.
It sounds like people use science to draw lines that hurt others.
Yes, friend, and that's why we must study this history with care and compassion. Next time, we'll explore how these small ideas shaped America's behaviors beyond its borders, in war, empire, and global competition. Thank you and have a wonderful day.